Alright.
Jesus Christ, Tekla. Why aren't you asleep?
I try not to sleep. No telling if I'll ever wake up. Let me ask you something. He will not understand. Where do you go when you lose consciousness? Why even bother?
What?
Surprise, surprise. You have a brain. The brain is a biological computational device running an electrochemical process. Your consciousness is an emergent property of said process. Blank face like that of a baby. In other words, you are your electrochemical process. Fundamentally, you have the experience of a continuous existence. You are you at this point in time, the same you as you were in the past, and you have a sensation of riding along this continuum of being you into the future. Do you follow me? Doesn't look like it. Continuing. On occasion, the brain may be subjected to trauma, temporarily discontinuing the electrochemical process, such as a boxer being knocked out. As this occurs, the brain is no longer running its electrochemical consciousness-generating process. Hence, consciousness is lost. You lose consciousness. Pay attention now. At this point in time, your consciousness, all that is you, your continuum of being you, has ceased to exist in the physical world. Now, moments later, the electrochemical process may start up again, allowing consciousness to emerge out of the information stored in the brain. But I wonder, where are you in the meantime? It's too stupid.
Nowhere.
Must we not assume that at the point when consciousness is lost, the person dies? If
Yes.
any consciousness appears or not in the same brain is entirely inconsequential to the dead consciousness. The new consciousness is simply a new person. Because it emerges from the same brain, it has access to all the memories and cognitive structures as a dead consciousness, so it thinks it is the same person, but in actuality, it is just an imposter, inheriting the body and brain from the previous, now dead inhabitants. Yes, like talking to a child.
What about the soul?
There's no soul.
I knew he was stupid. There's no such thing as a soul. We are machines of biology, nothing more, nothing less. Idiot! The soul, simply a pointless concept dreamt up by priests and fairy tale men. You're an anomaly, you. An outlier. Useless. A laughing anus is what you are.
That's so good. That's so good. Laughing anus aside, or maybe because of the laughing anus, that is so good.
What to make of you, I do not know. Are you here to help me?
You seem beyond help. What are you working on?
Gathering data. Nazi activity, behavioral patterns, ours, theirs, doing the math, developing predictions. Where are they allocating resources? Where will they strike next? And after that, what are the larger trends triggering their actions? Figure out what choices they will make before they make them.
You talk as if the future is inevitable, as if all our choices have already been made.
You think there is such a thing as free will? You know so little of the world. You want to be the captain of your fate, do you? This fight, you will lose. You cannot go to war against physics.
My actions are my own. I know that much.
All phenomena in the physical world follow the simple rule of cause and effect. Your brain is no exception to the rule. Know the causes, you can predict the effects. The same is true for everything.
So what's with the arsenal?
Preparing for the end. I know where my road leads, and I intend to take as many Nazis with me as I can muster.
Good.
You have any experience with firearms?
Will you teach me?
Yes. What are you pointing? Don't point it at me. Don't point it at the camera. Laughing anus. So, laughing anus aside, what she was talking about. Right, so the consciousness. Well, yeah, no. The consciousness is not a. Okay, let me just start from the beginning and summarize what she said. So, your sense of awareness arises from the activity in your brain, yes? So when you lose consciousness, like when a boxer is knocked out, or when you fall asleep, or when you go into a coma, then that consciousness ends, right? So the brain's processes, quote-unquote, end, and your consciousness ends. And that consciousness, presumably, is gone. And then when you wake up, the brain starts up again, regains consciousness, and the brain has stored in it the memories of that previous person, of that person. And so the brain picks up those memories and picks up where the last consciousness left off, but it's a new consciousness. So is it the same person, or is it a different person accessing the same memories? Is what she is saying. Like if you like when you go to sleep tonight and you wake up in the morning, you still feel like you because you still have all those memories from the previous day, or as many of them that your brain remembers, and and all your previous memories from before in your life. But the consciousness has been interrupted. So are you the same consciousness, or are you different consciousness? That's what she's saying. And the conclusion she comes to is that you are a different consciousness. But here's the part where she starts to go off the rails. I mean, if you thought she wasn't off the rails already, the part where she starts to go off the rails is that this new consciousness is an imposter pretending to be the previous person. And this is the mistake, because the new consciousness is no more real or fake than the previous consciousness, because the previous consciousness is also, by that definition, an imposter, because your previous consciousness also woke up that morning as a new consciousness, where the one picking up the memories from the one before that. And if we just kind of go all the way back, there is conceivably no original consciousness. Like where does it start? I mean, it doesn't start when you're born, because like before you're born there are brain activities in the fetus, right? And if you think that you can't remember being born, and indeed you can't remember the first few years of your life because your brain was not developed yet to have those memories. And so as far back as you can possibly remember, every single one of those consciousness was no more real or fake than every other one, which means there's no original. And whatever the original is, it doesn't matter because you can't remember it. So it's not the fact that every time you wake up it's an imposter pretending to be the previous consciousness. Is that every single time you regain consciousness when you wake up in the morning, your brain is just picking up where it left off before it lost consciousness. It's not fake. The consciousness is not fake. It's just been interrupted. It's just as real as all the other ones. But to complicate that even further, the idea that conscious and unconscious are two entirely separate things, and that those are the only categories, is also a fallacy. Because your unconscious affects your conscious in a way that you don't realize. Like just because, like even when you lose consciousness, your brain is still working. Like when you're sleeping, your brain still has activity. I mean, you can dream, and you might say your dreams is a different form of consciousness, although most people can't control their dreams. So there's awake, there's dreaming, but even when you are in what is supposedly a dreamless sleep, your brain is still active, just in a lower state, or like in a different state. And that is different from a person who is dead, whose brain has no activity and all the brain cells are dead. And so there's conscious, unconscious, and dead. And so the fact that you're not dead, your unconscious is continuous, right? As long as your brain is not dead, your unconscious is continuous. So the fact that the unconscious, then at certain points you can awake and generate a consciousness. So the consciousness kind of comes and goes. It comes when you wake up, it goes when you fall asleep. But the unconscious is continuous, and your memories are mostly continuous in the sense that your brain retains your memories, although you do forget things too. So your memories aren't that reliable either. But to the extent that your brain retains your memories, that is continuous. So it's not. So your consciousness comes and goes, but your unconscious is not impostering anything. It's your unconscious is continuous until you die. That is, from the moment you're conceived until the moment you die, or I guess from the moment you first gain nerve cells until you die, your nervous system is a continuously active. So so there is continuity. There's continuity of your unconscious brain, even if even if you argue that there's no continuity in your conscious brain, right? And then the next part where she's trying to predict the future, she's talking about how everything follows the laws of physics, and so everything is deterministic. That part is true as far as it goes, but it doesn't mean that everything is predictable. In fact, things are still unpredictable because when you like the further down in the details you get, the more chaotic the system becomes. And chaos in this sense, I mean it in the mathematical sense, which means that it is unpredictable because small differences in variables will lead to large differences in outcomes. That is a chaotic system. So the classic example of a chaotic system is the weather. Why is it impossible, or why does it seem impossible to predict the weather accurately beyond a few days, if that? The reason is because small differences in the weather can lead to very large differences in the outcomes, right? So whether because the fluid dynamics of the atmosphere is so complex that the wind patterns cannot be modeled accurately, and that is a computational problem in the sense that we can't run a simulation with enough detail to match the detail of the real world, and therefore small differences between the simulation and reality leads to large differences in the predicted outcomes. That is chaos. And because the world is like that in a lot of ways, just because everything is deterministic, it doesn't mean that you can predict the future, because you don't have the computational ability to simulate the world with enough detail to be able to mitigate the chaotic nature of the world. Right? Does that make sense? Just because it's deterministic, it doesn't mean you can determine what it is, because your computational abilities is limited. It is said that, or the way they express it is that you cannot simulate accurately the universe with any computer that is less complex than the universe, right? So that's the idea of irreducible complexity, in the sense that if you try to simplify things or try to approximate things, then your predictions will inevitably be wrong, because you have not put in the full variables of the universe into your model, into your simulation. So even though the idea of free will is really it's not really a question. I mean, the question is, do we have free will? Do we get to choose what we do? And so the idea of whether we have free will is not really the same question as whether the universe is deterministic. So it is both true that the universe is deterministic, and we get to choose what we do. Even though the fallacy, the common fallacy is that, well, if the universe is deterministic, then we don't have any free will, we don't have any choice. But the thing is that we have choice because we can't perceive the full complexity of the universe. Even though the universe is deterministic, because we, as individuals, can't predict the future, therefore we have a choice. The choice exists not because we can have an impact on the world, but because we don't know what our impact on the world is. Therefore we choose. Does that make sense? Maybe it seems kind of weird to you. And you might say, well, that's an illusionary choice then. If the world is deterministic, then any choice we make is an illusion. Yes, but it is only an illusion to the extent that our understanding of the universe is in itself an illusion. Because as I said, like our brain, look how small your brain is. Like, just put your hand on your skull, and just look at how small your brain is. The idea that this tiny little machine inside your skull can comprehend the full complexity of the universe is just absurd, right? Your brain is way too small to handle the full complexity of the universe. And so your perception of the universe itself is an illusion. Your understanding of the deterministic nature of the universe is itself an illusion. Because the real universe is nothing like what you can imagine, because your brain is just too small to imagine the universe in its full complexity. So you have the illusionary choice in your illusionary understanding of the universe. So so the fact that your choice is an illusion doesn't make it less meaningful, because it is just as meaningful as everything else you will ever know. Your illusion of free will is just as real and just as meaningful as everything else you will ever know, because everything you know is an illusion of what you think the universe is, and there's no way your brain can actually comprehend what the universe actually is. All we have is what we perceive, and everything we perceive is just an approximation of reality, right? And so the fact that even free will is an approximation, it doesn't matter, because that's as close to reality as we're ever gonna get. Does that make sense? I think it does. I think that makes sense. And so, and the thing is, we have to live as though we have free will. I'm still rambling. I should stop rambling. And the last thing is, we have to live as though we have free will, even though it is an illusion, because we can't grasp the future. We can't grasp the deterministic nature of the universe. The deterministic nature of the universe is too complex for us. So it's like, if we try to live as though we think the world is deterministic, we will get it wrong, because we cannot grasp the deterministic nature of the universe without understanding the universe in its full complexity, and we can't do that. And because we can't do that, living as though the universe is deterministic is even more wrong than living as though we have free will, because we can only understand what we can understand, and the limit of our understanding is what makes free will make sense to us. And with the limits of our understanding, the deterministic of the universe, it doesn't make sense to us, or rather, it doesn't help us deal with what we need to do to act as though we don't have free will. That doesn't actually help us, because it's like trying to live real, trying to live truthfully when everything we know is a lie. It doesn't work. Or like, if everything is false, trying to tell the truth, it doesn't work. Like, telling the truth only works if people can acknowledge that truth. And because we can't understand the full complexity of the universe, trying to live as though we do understand the full complexity of the universe doesn't actually work. So we have to live as though all we know is our limited perception of the universe. And in that perception, we seem to have free will. And that's what works, because that's the only thing we can grasp. Alright, I'm just gonna stop ranting. Back to this. So interesting, though. So interesting. The game just throws you this concept in the middle of the game. So interesting. What a great game, am I right? Anne and Milo are having a good time there. Oh, that's new. Is it Bilica? Bilica? Limestone quarry attacked by terrorists. Berlin, November 9, 1960. Following the horrific attack of an unknown terrorist cell in the Bilica limestone quarry, the quarry commander Irene Engel was awarded a medal by our beloved Führer for her bravery in defending against the crazed attackers. Oh, she didn't die? Oh, what? The commander is currently recovering in the Reich Hospital in Berlin and wants to spend this time with her family, said a representative of Frau Engel. Well, maybe she is dead, who knows? Her face was crushed and then she was thrown off a mountain. We don't need to know more about the mold infestation. Esteban, how's things, Esteban? Remarkably, a lot of people survived. So going back to the previous thing, where while Scottish friend were talking about the soldier who died and how we lost the potential. See, this is what I mean, because we rescued all these... Oh, he's in the hangar. We rescued all these people from the prison, and now we have so much potential. And I mean, none of these people have soldier experience, but they have potential. So potential is easy to find, whereas experience is not, and that's why I chose to save the experience and not the potential back at the start of the game.